Hey everybody, this is Pete with Hidea Outboards. Today we are going to take a look at our 2.5, 5, and 6 horsepower outboards. This video is geared towards people who it's their first time having an outboard, or they're looking to set the outboard up properly so that way you can get out on the water and have years of great enjoyment with your outboard and your boat. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. I'm going to be demoing today on our 6 horsepower motor. Our 2.5 motor, if that's what you've got, has an internal tank only. You'll see the gas cap on top. The 5 and the 6 both offer an internal tank and an external tank option. And there's actually a switch on the motor itself that we'll point out here in a few moments. So the first thing we're going to notice is that on the top of our cowling, it says fill engine oil. This is key because while these are tested at our factory, they're drained before they're shipped. So if you run this thing without putting oil in it, it's going to seize up and you're going to have a really pretty looking anchor at that point. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we put the oil in. The first thing you're going to do is go ahead and remove the cowling. Once you remove the cowling, you can start to explore the different components of the engine that are under the hood. You've got your internal gas tank, your gas cap and vent. You've got your manual pull start mechanism. As we explore this way, you'll see your fuel filter, you'll see a manual pump for primer, and you'll see your shifter. This is forward, neutral, and reverse on the 6 horsepower motor. As we explore around this way more, you'll see your carburetor, and as we continue around, you're actually going to see a big yellow cap. This is your oil cap, and it also doubles as your dipstick. So what you're going to do is remove that and place it to the side, and we're going to get our oil in a funnel and start to fill it up. Okay, now I've got my clean funnel, which I'm going to go ahead and insert into the oil reservoir. And in my other hand, I've got just some conventional 10W30 motor oil. Now, on the 5 and the 6, you're going to be putting in just over a half quart of motor oil to get this thing right in the middle range. On the 2.5, you're going to be looking at closer to 1/3 of a quart. Go ahead and reference the manual. That'll tell you the correct amount of motor oil to put in. When you do that, you have your funnel in, you have your oil, you go ahead and pour some in. Once we've put in the approximate amount of oil, we want to go ahead and remove the funnel, and we're going to go ahead and test the level to make sure that we're lining up properly with our oil level on the dipstick. Another thing you'll always want to have around is a nice roll of paper towels or a shop rag, because these will drip all over your clothes, all over the floor. So the way I'm going to test my level to make sure my oil level is correct is to reinsert the dipstick, screw it all the way back in via the oil cap. And on here there's actually 2 raised lines. Your goal is to get the oil level right between those 2 raised lines. That's going to be in the optimal oil level for optimal functionality. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. Go ahead and put this in, twist it back around until it starts to snug up on us. Then we go ahead and bring it back out. And as we take a look at this, you can see we have the exact perfect amount of oil in there. So now we're ready to move on to the next step. All right, now that our oil level is ready for us to go, the next step will be to add a little bit of gas. So again, the 6 and the 5 have both an internal tank and an external hookup. On the cap, there's actually 2 places that unscrew, and you might be wondering why. Well, this one opens up the gas tank to allow you to pour gas in, and this one on the top is actually a vent. When you're operating the motor and when we're starting the motor, we're going to keep this unscrewed a little bit because that allows air to come in, allows it to vent. If not, it creates a vacuum, which makes the gas have a hard time traveling through, and therefore it makes it hard to start and run your motor. So for adding the gasoline, we're going to go ahead and unscrew the larger cap. And you can use any sort of gas that you want, really. 87 octane is kind of the standard. You can use premium if you want to use premium, but there's really no need. You will, though, want one of these small gas tanks. You can get them from any gas station or any big box store. And The 5 and the 6 will actually also include an external tank and a fuel line as a part of their package. So when you purchase that, you get everything along with it. For right now, we're going to go ahead and just show you how to fuel up the internal tank. It's very simple. You just remove the top like we've already done. You make sure you have fuel in your container. This has a little safety right here. So you go ahead and flip it. You push it down a bit, and then you can hear the fuel filling. And that's it. So because these are sort of translucent, you can see the fuel level in the tank, so you can kind of have an indication of when to stop. You can go ahead and look into the tank. That can give you a visualization of when it's got enough gas in it to go ahead and run it. When you're done, you're going to go ahead and cap it. And as long as you're not planning on running it, if this is going to be transported or on the back of a trailer or your boat, then you're going to go ahead and seal the vent as well. That will keep any air from getting into it or any moisture while you're traveling. Now that we've got the oil in here, we've got a half a tank of gas or so, we are ready to move forward on getting this thing started. So what we're going to do first is on our little display here, point out some of the components and the steps needed to get the motor starting. Then we're going to go ahead and move it over to one of our test bins and fire it up so you can see it starting for the first time. Let's go ahead and just observe what's happening on the front here. We have quite a few components. Number one, we have our external hookup for an external gas tank. Again, if you have the external tank and the fuel line that come with the 5 or the 6, you can fill up that gas container at a gas station, connect the hoses, and it'll hook right up here. You wouldn't need to put any fuel in here at all if you don't want to. Right here we have our safety. This big red plastic switch right here is actually part of your safety. We'll talk about that in a moment. This is your choke. This is used for the first time you start the engine on a cold start. So the engine hasn't been running overnight, or this is your first time running it, and you're actually going to use the choke to give it that burst of gas that'll help it start. And then under here, you can observe a sticker here. It says inner and outer. And down here there's a switch. And you would adjust the switch depending on which tank you're using. So in our case, we're using the internal tank. We want our switch pointing over to the right. If we were using the outer tank, we will want to pull the switch off to the left. That lets the engine know where it's going to be drawing its suction from to get its gas to go ahead and run smoothly for you. Over here we have our throttle control and our tiller handle. This is used for steering the motor in your boat, and it's also for the throttle. So by rotating it left and right, you're giving more or less gas to it, which makes the engine go faster or slower depending on what you need. And then over here on this side, again, we already mentioned this, but we have our gear shifter here. Forward, neutral, and reverse on the 5 and the 6. It's important to note that the engine will only start when it's in neutral, and there's a few good reasons for that, but the most primary reason is that you don't want the motor to start and take off when you just start it and you're not expecting it. So it's a little bit of a safety mechanism in there. So forward, neutral, reverse. Now that we've gone ahead, oil, gas, we have a good understanding of what's going on in the control center of this outboard. We're going to go ahead and put the cowling back on, take the motor over to our test bin, and go through the steps needed to get this thing out in the water and running smoothly for you. Okay, we moved our 6 over to our test bin, which brings up an interesting point. So our test bins are really rudimentary. We're using some motor mounts that we built here, along with some inexpensive trash cans, plastic trash cans. It's always important to run your motor with water going through it. These are cooled, water cooled. So you always need to have your lower unit and your intake underwater, so that way the engine can keep cooling itself. Just a side note. If you're not going to be able to use a big bin, they also sell rabbit ears that hook onto the end of a regular garden hose. Those can go over the intakes above the lower unit. When you open up your motor, you probably saw this piece of red plastic with a little black clip on the end. This is kind of a kill switch. It's sort of a safety. It's required for the motor to run, and if it is removed, the motor will shut down automatically. So in order to start this motor up, we need to take the black clip and slide it underneath the red safety. When you do that, you'll notice how it springs up. It is now ready to operate. So, as we pointed out earlier, we have our different components. We have our choke. When we're starting this from a cold start, we're going to start by pulling the choke out. It'll only go out about 3/4 of an inch. If it goes out any more than that, there might be an issue. If it doesn't come out at all, there might be an issue. But it shouldn't go out any more than that. There's no reason to tug on this hard. Because we're using our internal tank, we don't need to worry about our external tank hookup right now. We do want to confirm that the switch is set to inner, which is pointing to the right. That is confirmed, so we're good there. And we also want to confirm that our vent is open slightly. So that's closed. Turn it a little bit to the left. It's loose. Now it's ready to go. Okay, from there we also have our throttle control on our tiller handle. When we're starting the motor, we want to make sure it's all the way down. There's actually a red triangle that marks that for you. So make sure that your handle is all the way down at the red triangle. That means it's ready to start. And then finally, you're going to make sure that your shifter is in neutral. So it's always a good rule of thumb just to pull it all the way forward. You know that's forward. Push back till it clicks. Then you know it's in neutral and it's ready to start. So then the next bit is going to be pulling the handle. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull this out. We don't have to yank on it really, really hard. We just need to give it a couple of pulls. The first try normally takes a couple of pulls. That's fine. And once this starts running on its own, and we can test throttle a little bit with our handle, you're going to go ahead and push that choke back in. When you're operating the motor normally, like when you're ready to take off and go start exploring, you're going to want to make sure that choke is in. So we only use the choke during a cold start and just until we get the motor running. So here we go. Our safety is in, our choke is out, we're in neutral, our throttle control is lining up with the red triangle, and I'm going to give it a nice tug on the manual pull start. And it started. Because it's running, I'm going to go ahead and push the choke in now. Now one thing you're noticing here is because it's the first time we're starting this motor up, you get a little bit of smoke, and that's okay. It's getting going, it's getting warmed up. At this point it's idling nicely. The throttle is all the way down, still at the red triangle. If I turn it to the right a little bit, you can hear the motor rev up, that's fine. I can go ahead and let this sit here. It's now idling nicely. Remember our safety cable? If we go ahead and give this a tug and pull it out, the motor comes back to a dead stop. So that's kind of the cycle. Now that our motor's already been running for a moment or two, we can start it back up the same way. You can put this back in, and we probably don't even need the choke this time. Let's try. Keep our triangle lined up, pull it again, and it starts right up. So if you're out fishing or driving around or exploring a lake and you're turning the motor off occasionally, you don't even necessarily need to use the choke unless it's been sitting overnight or for several hours and totally cooled down. So that's it. Your new Hidea motor is ready to go. If you have a 2.5, a 5, or a 6, this tutorial applies to all of those because we're talking about motors with internal tanks. We will also have videos for our 9/9, 15, and larger tiller handles, and also some for our remote control motors coming out soon. So stay tuned for those. If you have any questions along the way or you get stuck or anything here is unclear, feel free to visit us online at HideaOutboardMotors.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram, and feel free to message us or contact us, and someone will get back in touch with you very soon. Thanks, and enjoy your time out on the water.